is 5 minutes after 11. When are you going to wake up, James? Boris and Trump are cut from the same cloth. You're worried about what's happening in the USA. You should be very worried about the UK. Well, it's not either or, is it? I think you can be worried about two things at the same time. It is possible to hold two thoughts in your head at the same time. But I take your point. So I have resisted the urge to continue talking about the situation in America. So my apologies to Chris in Massachusetts, Tim, Jacob. I only mention Massachusetts because I love the idea that our reach is now so enormous. Start talking about some journalism that's been done by a journalist on a rival network, and lo and behold, the journalist rings in. Start talking about American politics, your switchboard fills up with people either from or in America. But also to Ivor and to Mark and to Robert, who's in Perth. I don't know whether you're in Australia or Scotland, but we'll return to this, I think, and hopefully I'll be a little better informed. It is part of the problem that I mentioned at 10 o'clock, though. The more informed you are, the more worried you get. And there is a temptation to look away from the ugly stuff, isn't there? Which leads us perfectly to Boris Johnson. 6 minutes after 11 is the time. And the latest brouhaha surrounding his decorations, his flat decorations, which... Again, I find myself wondering whether in ordinary times things would be kicking off a lot more. The question of this money, I'll try and run through the facts for you. Do you know, I often wonder if we had a camera in the studio all the time, whether you'd be able to tell whether I'm furiously gesticulating at my colleagues to ask them to do the silliest of tasks that I've forgotten to do myself. So I left my newspapers about 6 inches out of reach when I came on the radio this morning, and Shivani has very kindly just scurried into the studio to pick them up and hand them to me so that I don't have to either stretch away from the microphone or construct my introduction to this conversation with even less source material than I ordinarily have. But this is incredible. Lord Geit, who is the ethics advisor that Boris Johnson appointed after his last ethics advisor resigned after Boris Johnson ignored his report into Priti Patel being a bully. Sound effect time, Keith. It's another one of those things that until you say it out loud, it's not a big sound effect. It's just like that, you know, that tinging sound you get when you've got your text notification, ding. So you say, oh, well, what good news it is that the leader of the House of Commons has come out in favour of trial by jury. Whoa, ding. And you say today, the ethics advisor that he appointed after the last one resigned after Boris Johnson refused to accept his findings into the bullying committed by the current Home Secretary. Ding! All of these that tiny little bits of alarm bells. That's what the ding sound is. If you got all of the little dings together at the same time, you'd have an absolute alarm bell ringing. But because they happen a couple of weeks apart or an hour apart, or with Boris Johnson 10 minutes apart, it never sounds like an actual alarm bell. It just sounds like an individual ding. I'll stop doing that because I'm sure there's a dog somewhere that's just had some sort of an episode as a consequence of that unfamiliar sound effect. But the way I see it is this. Well, come on. How stupid do you have to be, really? Or how deferential do you have to be to buy this story? I talked about lies towards the end of the last hour, which has led perfectly into this part. The almost unbelievable defence that Boris Johnson has offered up for not telling Lord Geit that he had contacted Lord Brownlow. It's just like something out of Game of Thrones, isn't it? Why are they all blinking lords? So he didn't tell Lord Geit that he had contacted Lord Brownlow in order to ask for more money for the flat. And that was an egregious error. That was a grave offence. But Lord Geit, I think, has felt that he has little choice to accept that he forgot. And the reason why the WhatsApp messages detailing this request for more money, it ended up being about £112,000, that refurbishment. He's paid the money back, but he had absolutely no desire or intention of doing so until he got caught with his fingers in what looks increasingly like a Lord Brownlow-shaped till. And the reason why he didn't tell, or why the WhatsApp messages were not revealed, is because he changed his phone and he'd forgotten. This is what the Prime Minister of the United Kingdom is currently asking you to believe. He didn't disclose the WhatsApp messages asking Lord Brownlow for more money because he had changed his phone for security reasons and did not, I'm quoting now, did not recall the message exchange. We need more than a ding, Keith, don't we? That's what the Prime Minister of these islands is asking you to believe today. Hi, David. I'm afraid parts of our flat are still a bit of a tip. I know Nick Abbott. Everyone's telling me Nick Abbott's got the sound effects there. I know, but I'm no Nick Abbott, am I? I know my limit. I know my limitations, all right? I can't tell you how gratifying it is to work on a radio station where people like Sheila Fogarty, Eddie Mair, Nick Abbott constantly give me new levels of broadcasting genius to aspire to. Luckily, there's a few behind me, but we won't mention any names. However, I find myself reading this text exchange between Boris Johnson and Lord Brownlow, and then reflecting upon the idea that he's asking you to believe he'd forgotten all about it, and actually wondering whether I can cobble a phone in together out of this. Because who's going to ring me and say I believe him? Who can put their hand on their heart and say, I often forget about requests for tens of thousands of pounds to decorate my home, James. I think it's perfectly feasible. And also, if I texted Keith asking him for 50 grand to tart my flat up and then I changed my phone, of course I'd immediately forget that I'd ever asked Keith for £50,000 to tart my flat up. It's not as if I walk into it every single day and see the decorations and therefore have a little thought process which involves the identity of the person that I asked for the money to pay for the decorations that I wake up looking at every day. Yeah, if you asked somebody for some money to buy something in Ulaanbaatar that you then promptly forgot existed, I could almost begin to believe that you forgot who you'd asked for the money. But you wake up in the morning, you walk into your bathroom, you open a cabinet that Lord Brownlow has paid for, but you've forgotten asking Lord Brownlow for the money to pay for your bathroom cabinet. You walk into the kitchen, and there's some tiles on the wall, probably about 10 grand a piece, going by the cost of the overall refurbishment. There's some tiles on the wall in the kitchen, which you walk past every day. You put the kettle on. The kettle was probably paid for by Lord Brownlow, but you completely forgotten that you ever asked Lord Brownlow for any money to pay for the refurbishment of the flat because, you've got a new phone. Why have you got a new phone? Because you're such a lemon that you forgot or overlooked the fact that you'd left your personal phone number on a publicly accessible internet site that only got found out, dating back to your days as the Mayor of London, that only got found out as a result of some journalism after you'd become Prime Minister. I mean it. I know you don't always believe me. But I really do mean it when I ask you to ring me and offer an alternative view. And I do understand why I get the occasional texts off racists claiming that this is some sort of echo chamber. By all means, lads, ring me in, be racist. 0345 6060973. Tell me why there's nothing to worry about when the American president is embarked upon a sort of white supremacist, soft or even hard coup, and that we should all shut up and welcome the glorious rule of Donald Trump. It'd be a pleasure for both of us, I'm sure, but especially me. So, is there any way on earth that you could believe Boris Johnson today? And that, again, is a ding, 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 ding question, isn't it? Ding, 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 ding. Is there any way on earth that you can believe that Boris Johnson asked Lord Brownlow for tens of thousands of pounds to tart his flat up and forgot about it? What did he think? What happened? Was it delivered by a stork, this chunk of change? Did it arrive unprompted through his letterbox? Did he think that Carrie Simons bought a scratch card? Where did he think the money had come from? And remember, it's money that he sees the fruits of every single time he has his eyes open in his own home. It's not money that has been spent on, free school meals for the poorest children in the country, which you could forgive him for having forgotten about. It's not money that's been spent on a nuclear submarine moored somewhere off the coast of Scotland, which you could forgive him for temporarily forgetting about the existence of. It's not money that's been spent on something on the other side of London, like a cable car or an invisible bridge. It's not money that is in any way forgettable. It's money that's been spent on every single thing he sees when he spends time in his own home with his eyes open. I'm going to say that several times in the course of the next few minutes. It's already 11:15. How did that happen? This is money spent on every single thing he sees when he spends any time at all in his own home with his eyes open. But he's asking you to believe that he forgot about asking someone for that money. 0345 6060 973. I mean, you can go for who cares, I suppose. Who cares it's not taxpayers' money? One of my racist texters. I presume you're racist. Maybe I'm being grossly unfair, but I can't think of any reason at all why you'd still be clinging to the idea that this chap deserves a free pass or deserves a break. He's asking you to believe that he forgot. That's why you should care, because he's lying to you, perhaps. And quite a few of you pointing out the increasingly tired and ridiculous refrain that he's doing his best. Can we check how many people died on the day that he texted Lord Brownlow asking for more money for his flat? Can we check how many people were hospitalised that day and how many people died of COVID that day when he was suitably unbusy, for anyone saying he's so busy running the country? He was sufficiently unbusy to be able to remember to text a Tory donor asking for more money to tart his flat up. So I'm going to ask you whether you think this is corrupt, because there's another chapter to this story. Corruption doesn't necessarily involve illegality. In fact, one of the reasons why a certain brand of politician is very keen to overrule the law or overrule judges or, I don't know, refer jury verdicts to the Court of Appeal is because you can change the law to make corruption legal. But there's a second chapter to this. Afternoon, Prime Minister. I hope you're both well. Of course, get Lulu to call me and we'll get sorted ASAP. This is Lord Brownlow responding to the request for money from the Prime Minister. And he adds, thanks for thinking about GE2. What does that mean? Well, thanks for thinking about GE2. Well, go back to the original text from Boris Johnson begging for more money, in which says, P.S. am on the Great Exhibition plan, will revert. So Lord Brownlow has asked Boris Johnson to look into the possibility of having a second version of the Great Exhibition. And Boris Johnson, while asking Lord Brownlow for money, has promised to look into the thing that Lord Brownlow has asked him to look into. What's your definition of corruption? Hello, Lord Brownlow. Can I have some money for my flat, please? Oh, and by the way, that favour you asked me about, yeah, it's looking pretty good. 03456060973. If that's not corrupt, what is? Doesn't have to be illegal to be corrupt. And, I mean, I almost want you to ring me if you believe him, but I don't think I'll believe you. I think you'll either be lying to me, or you'll be lying to yourself, or you'll be lying to both of us. I forgot that I asked that man for the money that bought everything I see when I spend any time at all in my own home with my eyes open. 03456060973 is the number that you need. And I'll read a quick text from Tom, because I can't do it as a hook and tease, because I don't know whether we'll ever be able to find out whether it's a very good joke or whether it's actually a serious text. I'm 52% serious, 48% thinking it's a very good joke. He goes, why don't you just leave Boris alone? You spend your entire career hating the Tories. It's weird, you're so obsessed. Why don't you just marry Labour? So either that's a rather good joke, or it's from a kind of 8-year-old trapped in a man's body. The number you need is 03456060973. Why don't you just marry Boris Johnson if you believe that he's forgotten about asking a man for the money to pay for every single thing he sees when he spends any time at all in his own home with his eyes open? It is 21 minutes after 11, and I think, I mean, the egregiousness of the possible lie notwithstanding, it's this bit about, oh yeah, and don't worry, I'll look into the Great Exhibition. So if you're clinging, and I know how hard it must be for you at the moment, if you're clinging to the idea that this is defensible behaviour, and you've managed to blot out of your memory the knowledge that the last ethics advisor had to resign after Johnson refused and failed to act upon his findings about Priti Patel being a bully, then you're going to go for the idea that Johnson is, well, at least it wasn't taxpayers' money. Yeah, but when's the last time you could get the Prime Minister's ear for a personal project? Yeah, exactly. And the promise to do what Lord Brownlow had asked him to do while asking Lord Brownlow for money. Legally, the claim would be, I didn't know it was Lord Brownlow's money because Lord Brownlow was just the head of a trust which was designed to keep the identity of donors secret. But the bit I don't get, and this is where I demonstrate that I'm no lawyer, is that the trust hadn't been set up yet, which is how Lord Brownlow could reply again to Boris Johnson, saying, because the trust hasn't been set up yet, I know exactly where the money's coming from. I'll be able to get this sorted ASAP. It walks like a duck. It quacks like a duck. Is there any possibility at all that it's not a duck? 0345 606 0973. And you're right. The last fella to claim that he had lost all memory of messages he'd sent when his phone was replaced was indeed Lord Bethell, another former minister in this government. Michael's in Burton. Michael, what do you make of all this?
Oh, where did you start?
I don't know, mate.
I used to be a massive Tory supporter ever since. Obviously, we went to the Gulf War because obviously we went on a lie. But with this now, I mean, the country's struggling to pay our own bills. I mean, you look on the supermarket last night saying it's just going to go up and up and up, and was led on another lie about when we come out of Brexit. You know, he was going to, I can't remember what it was now, he was going to cut something to do with paying even more bills. VAT,
it was. VAT on fuel. He still might, but I mean, if we're going to start going over the Brexit lies, we'll be here all day. What was the one that broke the camel's back for you? What was the point at which you thought, up with this, I will no longer put?
Well, let's remember, every time the new MP goes into number 10, they get a £30,000. So he's already got the £30,000 to do up his property. But then it's this...
You can't get much for 30 grand these days, Michael. Have you been to IKEA lately?
Have you ever been to Poundworld? That's where I shop.
For the record, you cannot get interior decoration. You can't get wallpaper in Poundland.
Yeah, yes, you can.
Can you?
You go in there, you get paints in there. You go into B&M. I'm throwing them all out there now. B&M, you go into all them. That's where.
What are you getting? My Poundland, I get deodorant and I get. Well, I mean, I don't want to confide in you, but I get pickled onion Monster Munch if they've got any in. But otherwise, anyway, carry on. So,
but at the end of the day, what I'm trying to say is it's all on lies. I don't trust Labour either because the Labour leader, wants to be like Tony Blair. He's
all right. Okay, but I mean that isn't all politicians are as bad as each other. Here's one who's lying to you every day, and here's one who isn't. So
how can you trust it?
Well, no, hang on. Just listen to what I said. Here's one who's actually lying to you, and here's one who isn't.
Say it again, sorry.
Here is a politician who is lying to you every day, and here is a politician who isn't.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah. Well, they all lie, don't they?
No. Well, what's the biggest lie Keir Starmer's told?
What's the biggest lie?
Yeah.
Well, he's not told a lie, I guess, as such. No, you're right there. Yeah, I'll take that one back.
Well, just pause for a minute, just pause for a minute, because you're lumping them all in together. You've come on the radio to list the lies that Boris Johnson has told.
All right,
If we started now, we wouldn't have finished by the time Kidderminster Harriers beat Reading in the third round of the FA Cup tomorrow. We'd still be here listing those lies. I've asked you, and you've got all the time in the world, because you've just lumped them in together, to tell me about the lies Keir Starmer has told, because you don't trust him either, and you've got nothing, mate. Someone's done that to you.
No. I don't trust him because he basically says he wants to be like Tony Blair.
No, he doesn't. He wants to win elections.
Well, that's what he said. Yeah, he said he wants to be on the same path as Tony Blair. He was the biggest liar going.
He's never said that. Anyway, you're going off on a bit of a red herring. I'm just trying to show you what happens when you believe the people who told you to vote for Boris Johnson. When you believe what they're telling you about Keir Starmer, you end up where you are today, Michael.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I'll take that one back, but I'm still sticking with I'd never trust the Tories again.
Fair enough. I wonder what you'll do next. I mean, that is a problem. I sympathise with you up to a point, but I think we've reached that point. Here it is. Get Lulu to call me and we'll get it sorted ASAP. Thanks for thinking about the Great Exhibition. Oh, and he adds, I should have said, as the trust isn't set up yet, it will be in January, approval is a doddle as it's only me and I know where the money will come from. So as soon as Lulu calls, we can crack on. 215 people died of COVID on the day that this text exchange took place. How many of them would still be alive today if we'd had a little bit more clarity in leadership? We will never, ever know. But the fact that the trust hadn't been set up, and the trust was being set up in order to anonymise the donors that were going to pay for the refurbishment of Boris Johnson's flat, while the man that was poised to set up the trust, who was also providing all the money that would pay for the refurbishment of the flat, is telling Boris Johnson that because the trust hasn't been set up, we don't actually have to seek any approval, it's all down to me, and I know where the money's coming from. Brackets, this bit not contained in the text, it's all coming from me. So there's a lot of, a distinct aroma of fish surrounding all of that, but the point where I think most of us leave the room is the point at which Boris Johnson claims he'd forgotten all about it. And the proof that it took place miraculously disappeared when he changed his phone number. I mean, most people transfer their WhatsApp from their old phone to their new phone. No, isn't it just about logging into Google, moving across your... I'm not in my biggest comfort zone here, and I know one of the advantages of WhatsApp is the encryption, so downloading it undoes that, but undoes that. Samina is in Tooting. Samina, what do you reckon?
Hi, James. Well, I was starting with similar to the last caller, saying, where does one start from? But then he kind of went off track. So the issue that I had was that how could the Charity Commission get hold of those messages if it changed his phone, yet Lord Guy couldn't?
Well, I think they were leaked.
So, yeah, okay, so that's fascinating. You know, it's just fascinating. But the point about where do you start with the untruth, the stuff about Northern Ireland, even when he was the Mayor of London, the things around the Garden Bridge, the thing about him...
Is there no way he could have forgotten about it? He's a very busy man. He's got a biography of Shakespeare to write. He's got children coming out of his ears. He's got... lots of stuff going on. I mean, who hasn't spent 104? Who hasn't spent? Stop interrupting me when I'm interrupting you. Who hasn't spent £140,000 doing up their home and then forgotten all about asking someone for the money to pay for it?
He could have conveniently forgotten about it when he had his conversation with Lord Guy and then suddenly remembered afterwards. You know, it's a consistent pattern. Remember when Dawn Butler accused him of lying when she told the truth?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I do.
And then she got reprimanded by the Speaker.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's like, it just makes you laugh. It's sort of like his mate, Zach Goldsmith, staying at his place. And all, it's just a consistent
free holiday.
pattern.
Do we know yet who paid for the holiday in Mustique? I don't know if we
Not
do.
yet.
Actually, no.
The Northern Ireland stuff. Remember when he was on video when he was campaigning to be Prime Minister?
Yes,
you
of
will
course.
not be affected.
No, I know.
And yet, what
but
does he
that's
do
old
straight
school.
away?
That's old school lies. You know, that's pre. I don't know.
And then he suddenly disappears for 10 days over Christmas because he couldn't, when all this did get leaked. And the thing that gets me, James, is that all we see him is at vaccination centres. There is a lot of other things going on in the country. Yes, we've got a pandemic. I'd love for him to visit a homeless shelter.
I guess it would lead to some slightly uncomfortable questions about how those people had ended up homeless. It'd be nice to see him visit. For some Tory MPs took their pictures be careful what you wish for, actually, Samina. There were a few Tory MPs taking selfies at food banks over Christmas. I mean, there's an interesting moral contortion that's been undertaken by people like Dominic Raab. 31 minutes after 11 is the time. I guess someone tell me this isn't corruption. Because even if you believe that he forgot all about asking Lord Brownlow for the money to pay for the stuff that he sees every time he spends any time in his own home with his eyes open, the fact that there's a quid pro quo here. Yeah, can I have some money, please? Oh, by the way, that favour you asked me for, yeah, it's looking good. Oh, here is some money for you. Oh, by the way, that favour I asked you for, thank you. That's just rank, right? That's not supposed to happen here, is it? 0345 6060973. Holly Harris is here with the headlines. 25 to 12 is the time. I guess I want to examine the question of whether or not this is actually corrupt, according to the standards that we would once all have subscribed to. So pick a politician. Better pick a pepper or two. Pick any politician you want. One you don't like. So... I mean, it could be anyone from Margaret Thatcher to Sadiq Khan. Just pick a politician you don't like, OK? Now, imagine that politician sending a message, depending on what era of history we're talking about. It could be by carrier pigeon or WhatsApp, all right? We'll do the full spectrum of recent history. A politician you don't like. I think it's important that you focus on this because... real consistency involves wanting the politicians you do like to be treated exactly the same as the politicians you don't like. I don't struggle with that. If this was a politician I liked, I'd be just as furious. In fact, I must talk to you, for example, about a Labour peer who has been found guilty of the most disgusting crimes. Lord Ahmed of Rotherham, ironically enough, he was called. It is one of the grossest stories I've ever read. I've got to be honest with you. And because the offences were 50 years ago, it hasn't received... as much coverage as it would have done if they'd been recent. But goodness me, that is a tale that is almost beyond belief in its depravity and its confusion. So it's never difficult to want people that you think you hold political common ground with to be held to the same standards as people you don't. But for the purposes of this, if anyone is struggling, imagine it's a politician that you don't like, okay? And they sent a message to a donor asking for money. It's not asking for money to spend on decorating their flat. It's not complicated. It's not... you've got a flat. You want to decorate it. You end up spending about 140 grand decorating a flat, and you get in touch with the donor asking for money. The donor not only coughs up, which you then claim, or the politician you don't like then claims to have completely forgotten about asking, right? But crucially, when the donor coughs up, the donor asks for a favour. Whether or not the favour ends up being delivered or not, we will maybe never know. Because I suppose this is a point where Boris Johnson's very loose relationship with the truth ends up working in his favour. If he turned around and now and said, "Oh, don't worry, folks, I was lying to old Brownlow. I was lying to old Brownlow when I said that I would do that favour for him. And if anyone, if you're ever going to believe me, folks, you're going to believe me when I tell you I was lying. So it may not be that he intended to deliver the favour that Lord Brownlow asked for when promising to give Boris Johnson the money needed to pay to tart up his flat. But he asked for a favour. And Boris Johnson said he was going to do it for him, while also spending tens of thousands of pounds on doing up his flat. So if that is not corrupt, what is? 0345 6060 973 is the number you need. 11:38 is the time. Kevin is in Dorking. Kevin, what have you got?
Good morning, James.
Hello, Kevin.
My comments are, I think anybody with an ounce of common sense knows that Boris is lying. And I think his attitude is, what are you going to do about it? You know, I'll just tell another lie, and what are you going to do about it?
When did our head disappear below the waterline? When did we actually... When did it reach a point where there was so much of it that we stopped noticing or caring? We've drowned in it now, haven't we? I mean, you get the occasional idiot like me on the radio pointing them all out, and there are people like Peter Oborne, former Telegraph and Mail journalist, who is also obsessed with pointing out lie after lie after lie after lie. But for the general population, it seems, oh, yeah, all right, never mind. We kind of run out of road almost.
I think we have. I mean, we just, it's almost become the norm. We just get, as you say, we get sort of saturated in this, and he's just sort of asked, what are you going to do about it? And, there's nothing physically we can. He'd just say, well, do something about it, sort of thing, because, we have no options but to just sort of go, oh, well, OK, he's lied, but...
All right, then. Lying is one thing. Actual corruption is another. If you ask me for a favour and I ask you for money and I'm Prime Minister... Yep. Is that or is that not quite a big deal?
Just a bit, yeah. I mean, it'd be nice to say I've lent you a few quid, James. Definitely.
It's not a loan. Remember, it's a gift.
Oh yes, it's not. You're right. Yeah. Well, even more prestigious. I gave you money to do up your flat, and then you lied about it.
No, you asked me for a favour when you gave me the money to do up the flat, and I promised that I would do my best to deliver that favour.
Yeah. It's, as I say, it's just another way of trying to fudge over the truth, and
I don't know what, and like you, I don't know how you snap this. I was thinking back to the lad in Bolton who's been seduced into thinking, oh, they're all as bad as each other. Here's a bloke lying to me every day. Here's a bloke who isn't. I don't trust either of them. How do you? I mean, that is newspapers. That's the British media for you. Whether you read the newspapers or not, they infect every level of our public discourse, including this show. I'm guilty of it, although hopefully I also provide the antidote while reporting on the poison. Nick's in Paddington. Nick, what would you like to say?
Hello, James.
Hello,
I've got some hunting tips for you, actually. Just because it looks like a duck, sounds like a duck, there might be a scenario where it isn't.
It might be Elmer Fudd with one of the... Well, he doesn't really walk like a duck, but it could be... it could be a tiny human in a duck suit.
I'm no fan of Boris Johnson and this, what's going on. There's obviously a lot of dodgy stuff going on. But I think if you look through the minutes of the meetings that Oliver Dowd and people like that have had around this exhibition and the Brexit festival and stuff.
Is it the same thing? It's
not. I don't think it is.
Oh.
So I'm fascinated by the festival of UK 22. I think it's a great thing personally. But if you look at this Brownlow, is it?
Brownlow, yes.
Look at his website. It says he's an entrepreneur and a philanthropist, and he's a trustee of the Royal Albert Hall.
Yes.
So, is there a scenario? Because I'm just trying to find middle ground in all this binary arguing.
Are you being a bit facetious in your portrayal of yourself as a devil's advocate?
Well, that's why I listen to you, James, because I think you try and find middle ground. It's like that politics.
I try to, but where? Go on then. Where is the middle ground here?
So I just think that, right or wrong, it's how the world works. And if this bloke is genuinely an entrepreneur, he's made money. If he's genuinely a philanthropist, he wants to give it away, and he wants to get funding for.
No, I don't think tarting up the Prime Minister's flat counts as philanthropy.
Well,
does it?
I know.
When you think about feeding hungry children, or housing refugees is philanthropy, or even building a library. But buying 800 quid rolls of wallpaper for Boris Johnson, I'm sorry, you're not having that as philanthropy.
No,
mate.
I'm not having that as philanthropy. What I'm saying is that's the backhander that gets his philanthropy, the money for the project at the Royal Albert Hall. Because the Exhibition 2, or whatever they called it, looks like it was supposed to be a bit of a jamboree in Hyde Park and a bit of something going on at the Royal Albert Hall that would make money for the Royal Albert Hall, which is a struggling arts venue like many others.
Right.
Does that make any sense? I don't know.
Well, honestly, no. And I think we both know that, Nick.
Well, I don't know, James.
Really?
I didn't go. I stood outside to do that Prince Charles held at the Royal Albert Hall the other year, and it was a massive fundraiser, and that's just how this world seems to work. Because people
you're conflating. You're talking very quickly, which is no. That's. I mean, it's a compliment. It could be that your brain is moving faster than mine, but no, I meant that actually. But the problem here is you are in a sense suggesting it's plausible that Boris Johnson forgot about asking the bloke who provided the money for everything he sees when he spent.
No excuses.
Okay, so that you don't believe him. You're allowed to.
I don't believe him at all. He'll go to any means to get some.
And Lord Brownlow could have paid for this wallpaper without asking for a quid pro quo.
But if the quid pro quo was to get a project signed off that would benefit one of the projects that he is a trustee and a charitable provider
Well, this is just very low level. The end justifies the means, and the means are corrupt, though. That doesn't make them uncorrupt.
I run a charity for kids and creativity in schools, and what have I got to do to get money? Just sit there begging on the street?
Well, you've got to be really rich and buy some wallpaper. Well, so you're suggesting you could get funding for something, quote, good, end quote, by giving some of your private fortune to the Prime Minister to buy wallpaper. I think you're almost certainly right. But I don't know enough about the mooted festival to know whether or not it fits this description. And, of course, if he was a true philanthropist, he'd use some of his millions to bankroll the festival that he wants to have. So I don't know. I don't know enough to comment on that. But I think we're all agreed it's very, very hard to mount a defence of Boris Johnson's behaviour that endorses the idea that it's possible to forget about asking someone for the money that paid for your flat to be redecorated. Because, you know, I walk into my kitchen in the morning and I could tell you where every single penny had come from. For the stupid kettle we never should have bought, from David Mellor Designs, not that David Mellor, early in our marriage, before the children, when we could afford to buy stupid kettles that we never should have bought. We've still got that sitting on the stove. The fridge that gives, you know, it's got a water dispenser in the door. I could tell you where we got that fridge from. I could tell you how we paid for it. I could account for every single item in my house and tell you exactly where the money came from. Largely because it all came from my wife and I. But equally, if someone else had paid for it... Oh, what about wedding presents? Can you remember who gave you your wedding presents? You walk into the sitting room and coffee table... Yeah, that was off Keith. And Shivani, that's a lovely present. I could have a fair crack at it, and if I couldn't remember, Mrs. O'Brien definitely could. Boris Johnson can't remember asking for the money that paid for pretty much everything in his flat. And when I say everything, maybe I'm doing a disservice. Maybe you don't get much for 140 grand.